everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I will be doing the unboxing of the September Hip Kit Club kit. And if you're new to my channel, I always do a project at the end of an unboxing, so stick around for that. Let's go ahead and dive into this box. So in typical Hip Kit Club fashion, our products are packaged with a sheet of tissue paper. Sometimes I go ahead and save that tissue paper for using on projects or save it for gift wrapping later. Since I bought the extra cardstock this month, let's go ahead and start there. This is all Bazzill cardstock, and there are 2 sheets of each color, which I will list, and I will give you the names in color order as you see them there on screen. So that first yellow one is Yukon Gold. The next teal one is Rain. The purple there is Heidi. The gray is Ash. The aqua is called Aqua. The peach is Coral Cream. The light pink is Tutu Pink. And the white is, well, white. The Hip Kit color scheme for their cardstocks often lean towards pastel kind of palettes, and so this richer palette definitely speaks to fall, and it definitely has a cozy feel to it, so I was happy to buy the extra cardstock this time. Taking a look at the main kit, we'll start with the embellishments. This is a Pink Fresh Studio die cut ephemera pack, and I'll go through more of that later. Next up is their chipboard flare pack, and I love the chipboard flare. I loved the flare movement from a while back, so this chipboard flare makes it less bulky on pages. And here we have a Thickers Gold Puffy sticker pack, and then this is the Jen Hadfield The Avenue collection, which is her newest collection. And it has some gold foiling to these elements, which is beautiful. Lots of homey icons there. And then this is the Pink Fresh Studio alphabet. Now this alphabet is pretty small, so I am going to grab a larger alphabet to go with my kit this month. And then we'll turn ourselves to the pattern papers. The first selection of pattern papers are from the Crate Paper Marigold collection. We're definitely seeing a richer color palette here and some homey icon elements. In fact, there are some houses right there, so what more speaks of home? So while some of the pattern papers definitely have heavy icon themes to them, a lot of this pattern paper is pretty generally usable with subtler patterns and kind of wide use themes to them, especially things like the plaid and the hearts. And now we're moving on to some Heidi swap papers, and actually I just ordered some of this from an online shop, so here we go. I will have plenty of it to play with. And then this last piece is a Pink Fresh Studio. I love all those frames, and that back side is pretty good too, so I'm not sure which side of that paper I will put to use first. But part of the fun of kits is getting this supply pile and stretching how you think about them. So I'm going to go ahead and give you a super quick look at all of the pieces in this die cut ephemera pack, and then we'll move on to the project. But I do like to go ahead and do this little exercise of opening up all these pieces, because sometimes you're surprised, like that chair is pretty large of a piece, so it's nice to see. Even though the back of the package has all of the icons listed, it's nice to see how big they actually are. All right, I am ready to move on to the project. So I have these photos of my daughter's final summer theater camp from last year, and I am going through my papers and choosing pieces that I think will work. Those frames I think will work great behind the small photos as fussy cut elements. And then I continue looking. This paper that says Vibes doesn't quite work, but the back side of that tie-dye says You're One of a Kind, which I think is great. This paper has a bit of a star motif, which goes great with a theater star. And then some cut-aparts are always helpful with tags for layering, embellishment clusters. And then because I have the cardstock, let's go ahead and use it. So I pull some colors that I think could coordinate well with these pattern papers. And then I always look through my embellishments and I choose aside pieces that could work with this, and that piece says Shine on it, which I think I will use. And then I've got some kind of star themes and elements. Then I might also put some of those hearts to use. So I always pull out pieces that I think will work, and I give myself a pile to work with. And why I like to do this is that one, it kind of limits my choice so I'm not constantly thinking. And two, it gives me enough choice that I feel like I can make choices that support the story. The initial choices made, I turned to the design of the layout, and for these little photos, I'm just going to trim them down so that they have a built-in white border on them. And my plan is to fussy cut out that frame paper and layer them up as if these photos were framed and hanging on the wall. So I know I'm going to have 3 of these little photos going in a horizontal row across, and then I'm trying to decide a way to split the pattern papers so that the 3 photos are on one side of the pattern paper and the single large 4x6 photo is on another side of the pattern paper. And I'm trying to get the 1/3, 2/3 split that is common in the rule of threes. And I come back to this design principle again and again because I'm a fairly structured thinker, and so when I have a foundation of guidelines to fall back on, it really helps me feel like I have a solid design base, and then I can kind of embellish and go from there. So I am cutting this paper apart so that I have 1/3 of that paper on the left, which will be the space holder for my 4x6. And then I have the 2/3, which I set up so that it would let that phrase read clearly, "You're one of a kind." And that will be on the right-hand side, and it will be the landing spot for my 3 little photos. And now I'm going to add a horizontal element across this page. And I choose some of the colors based on some of the colors I was seeing in the embellishment options. And I'm going to set up this horizontal strip so that just a little bit of that brighter color pops through on the base. And again, I'm going to place this horizontal element on that 1/3, 2/3 split. And so here you can see I've got it started with the setup there. And then I can start adding little elements that will help embellish and build. And as you saw me move that down, I moved that down to get more of that 2/3, 1/3 split. And here I am, I fussy cut my frames and I haven't glued anything down yet because I'm still thinking about layout and placement, and I started arranging those elements, and I start thinking about some of my clusters to make sure that I have enough room to kind of fit the elements that I have in mind. And you see there, I just had to shift that horizontal border down a little bit because it started creeping up on me as I was working. I am starting to build up these clusters, like I said, so that I make sure I have plenty of room for everything. And then I go ahead and go back and cut apart more of the elements that I had in mind for using, because the elements that I had here were not quite enough embellishment for what I like to do. And then I start building my little photo frames. And in a minute, you'll see me change my mind here because I realize that one photo frame off to the right-hand side is my daughter in a sword fight. And oh, before I get to that, let's talk about this here. I decided that photo needed a little bit of definition and separation from the background. And so I chose more of that paper that had a little bit of pop of color that also is a piece from the branding strip that I'm building up my clusters over there on the right, that little stripy piece. So that pulls elements from the left-hand side across to the right-hand side of the page and helps give some design balance. Okay, back to these little photo frames. That photo of my daughter sword fighting, she is actually facing off to the right, which goes off the edge of the page, and I don't like that. So I decided to reverse those photos so that her face is facing into the design of the page. And then because the balance of those frames threw me off, I did rearrange the frames a little bit. And now I'm satisfied with those design pieces and I can glue everything down in place. I arranged that one so that the frame is just slightly tucked around the embellishment cluster that I'm starting to build. So when I'm building my embellishment clusters, I really do think a lot about overlapping elements, touching elements next to each other, tucking elements into the nooks and crannies of other elements. Like here, I'm going to put this word shine, and then that H is overlapping the tag, and then the little word strip is going to tuck right up next to the cinder of the H. So as I'm building these clusters, I do think a lot about that. And then I also think about balancing color and elements. So I have a star themed element in one cluster. I'm going to try and pull that into another cluster. I have a dark blue element in one cluster. I'm going to make sure I have some dark blue elements in another cluster. I have a tag element. I'm going to pull in another tag element so that while there's enough variation in things, there's also enough cohesiveness in things that the design works across the whole layout. So that is how I approach my clusters. With my clusters done, I move on to my title. Like I said, I did want to pull in a larger alphabet set to go along with this kit because the tiny letters don't do enough for me. So I did, this is a black alpha from a previous Hip Kit Club kit. And then I can use these tiny alphas more as a subtitle, and that's what I prefer to, how I prefer to use these little alphabets. Now you see up there with my main title, I tucked a little cut apart tag behind it because it didn't have enough definition to it. It was kind of getting lost in the background. And this is where I did not do quite the good job of planning the base of this design page as I wanted to, because now that title is too close to that top embellishment cluster, and it's a little hard visually to read where the cluster ends and where the title begins. If I had put that tag maybe on top of the photo and moved it down a little bit to hold my title, that would have been a better flow, I think. So we live and we learn with these mistakes. So I got my journaling done in between the elements of that pattern paper. So it's there, but it's subtle, and I like how that came out. And here is a close-up look of the rest of the page and kind of how my clusters came together. I did forget to put my date on this layout, which I will go back and do with a date stamp. But for now, that is my project. I hope some of my tips and tricks helped you, and I will see you next time. I really appreciate you watching. If you got something helpful out of this video, please do give it a like. That helps my channel. And if you want to catch my future videos, please subscribe.